The quiet hum of the Valerian hegemony's flagship, the Goliath Ascendant, was a symphony of galactic supremacy. Its polished chrome decks gleamed under the filtered light, reflecting the perfectly composed faces of its bridge crew. High Strategos Veskrin, a being of regal bearing with multifaceted eyes and a crest of iridescent feathers, observed the diplomatic berths through the reinforced viewport. His species, the Valerians, had presided over this sector of the Orion Arm for millennia, their empire built on technological finesse and calculated diplomacy. They were the arbiters of peace, the engineers of order, and the undisputed masters of orbital architecture. Below, nestled amongst the sleek, elegant vessels of various allied species, was an anomaly. The Terran Confederacy's Ironclad, a vessel that looked less like a ship and more like a block of unyielding metal. It was squat, angular, devoid of the graceful curves or artistic embellishments common in most interstellar designs. Its external plating appeared to be fused rather than seamlessly molded, betraying a crudeness that Veskrin found almost offensive. The humans, a species barely 2 centuries removed from their home star, had recently been admitted to the Concord of Worlds on probationary terms. Their rapid expansion, their aggressive ingenuity, and their baffling resilience had made them a contentious addition. "Report on the Terran vessel, Tactician Kale," Veskrin purred, his voice a low, resonant chime. "I wish a comprehensive profile, a detailed security verification as per Section Gamma 7 of the Xylos Accords." Tactician Kale, a slender being with 6 dexterous digits hovering over a glowing console, paused. "High Strategos, the humans have already provided their standard schematics. A deep scan might be perceived as intrusive." Veskrin's crest flared slightly, a subtle display of irritation. "Intrusive or merely thorough, we host this convocation, Tactician. It is our right, indeed our responsibility, to ensure the safety of all attendees. Besides," he added, a predatory glint in his multifaceted eyes, "it would be educational to understand the design philosophies of these extreme environment adaptives more fully." His tone dripped with thinly veiled contempt. He had heard the whispers, the awestruck reports from exploratory probes that had stumbled upon human-settled worlds, describing the harsh gravities, the volatile atmospheres, the aggressive biospheres these Terrans seemed to not merely survive, but thrive within. Yet he believed it was simply brute force, a lack of refinement. Kale hesitated, then nodded, his digital array sweeping across the Ironclad. "Commencing deep penetration scan, High Strategos. Warning! The Terran vessel's energy signature is unusually low for its apparent mass. Initial readings indicate highly shielded power conduits." "Expected," Veskrin scoffed. "Brute force applied to energy suppression. Continue." On the Ironclad's bridge, Captain Elias Thorne, a human whose age was difficult to discern from his calm, unlined face, watched the holographic projection of the Goliath Ascendant with an almost unnerving stillness. His chief of operations, Commander Zara Vey, a woman with closely cropped hair and eyes that missed nothing, spoke quietly. "Valerian long-range sensors have gone active, Captain. Full spectrum, deep penetration. They're taking a peek." Thorne merely grunted, a sound that conveyed more amusement than concern. "Let them. It's what they do. High Strategos Veskrin has never seen a puzzle he didn't want to dissect." He leaned forward, resting his forearms on the console. "Keep our shields at passive, no active countermeasures. Just let them look." "Understood, Captain," Zara replied, a faint, knowing smile touching her lips. The Ironclad remained outwardly inert, a silent, unmoving block of mystery against the backdrop of the star-dusted diplomatic bay. Back on the Goliath Ascendant, Tactician Kale's console began to glow with increasingly complex data streams. Initial structural integrity readings indicate an incredibly dense hull, High Strategos, far beyond what is standard for a vessel of this displacement. It appears to be layered, almost an organic accretion, but composed of inert, highly resilient alloys. Veskrin's feathery crest twitched, over-armored, typical of a species reliant on primitive kinetic warfare. What of internal systems, power distribution? Power conduits are unusual, Kale responded, a note of confusion entering his voice. They are not optimized for efficiency, high strategos. Rather, they appear to be designed for redundancy. Multiple pathways, highly insulated, capable of shunting massive, unstable energy loads without failure. It's an incredibly robust, if wasteful, design. Wasteful indeed, Veskrin muttered, though a flicker of curiosity stirred within him. Valerian design prioritized efficiency, elegance, and maximum output from minimal input. This was the antithesis of their philosophy. The scan continued, delving deeper. Weapon systems are primarily kinetic, as anticipated, mass drivers of considerable caliber, but their ammunition stores, they are not just standard slugs, there are variations. Gravimetric destabilizers, plasma cord projectiles, even what appear to be cryo rounds. And the weapon mounts, they're modular, capable of rapid reconfiguration. It suggests an adaptability to various threats rather than specialized engagement profiles. Kale paused, his multifaceted eyes widening slightly as new data scrolled across his screen. Life support systems, high strategos. This is extraordinary. The atmospheric processors are not only capable of filtering an astonishing range of harmful particulate, but can also recalibrate for extreme pressure differentials and atmospheric compositions in moments. The internal climate controls can shift temperature by hundreds of degrees Celsius in seconds. The water reclamation system is designed for a truly staggering level of contamination. Veskrin frowned. Why design a ship for such varied, extreme internal environments? A vessel's interior is standardized for its crew. Perhaps not for a Terran vessel, high strategos, Kale murmured, a hint of unease in his voice. The biosignatures, I am getting multiple readings for each crew member. Not just physical signatures, but bioaugmentations. Not cybernetic, but cellular and systemic. Rapid healing factors, increased bone density, enhanced neurological processing. It appears almost every crew member has undergone extensive physiological modification. A chill began to creep down Veskrin's spine. Valerians valued genetic purity, maintaining a pristine baseline for their species. The idea of widespread, intentional biological alteration was deeply unsettling. What purpose would such modifications serve? Survival, Kale whispered, the word hanging heavy in the silent bridge. The internal trauma bays are not just for medical emergencies, they are full-spectrum regenerative chambers. And the crew quarters, high strategos, they are Spartan, yes, but each one contains an astonishing array of individualized survival equipment. Portable environmental suits capable of operating in vacuum or under crushing pressures. Recalibratable rebreathers. Emergency nutrient paste that can sustain an individual for weeks in extreme deprivation. Veskrin strode to Kale's console, his regal composure beginning to crack. Show me the energy readouts for the command bridge, the power allocated to the command functions. Kale adjusted the scan. High strategos, the command bridge shows almost no dedicated power allocation. It draws from every system simultaneously, capable of functioning even if 90% of the ship's primary power grid is compromised. It's not centralized. It's distributed. Resilient to an illogical degree. Illogical, Veskrin snarled. What else is illogical? The structural integrity field generators, Kale continued, his voice now tinged with genuine apprehension. They are not just for external shielding, they are interwoven throughout the ship's internal architecture. Entire sections of the vessel appear capable of self-sealing, self-pressurizing, even adapting their structural composition in real time to absorb impact or redistribute stress. It's like the ship itself is a living organism. A shudder passed through the Goliath Ascendant's bridge crew. The idea of a vessel that could repair itself, that could adapt and change its very form under duress, was alien to their sensibilities. Their ships were works of art, precisely engineered. This human vessel was a blunt instrument, designed for a singular, terrifying purpose. And the crew quarters, Cale pressed on, his voice barely a whisper. The bioscans are resolving more clearly. Beyond the physical resilience, the psychological profiles. They are not calm, high strategos, not by our metrics. They are perpetually alert. Their stress responses are not typical. They are not indicators of weakness, but of heightened readiness. Their fear responses are suppressed, replaced by a surge of aggressive determination. Veskrin stared at the holographic image of the Ironclad with dawning horror. It was not merely a vessel, it was a testament to an ideology. Every system, every layer of armor, every single design choice screamed one terrifying truth. This ship was built not just to win, but to endure. It was built to survive what other species would consider catastrophic destruction. Its power systems were redundant not for efficiency, but so that even a crippled vessel could still fight. Its life support was adaptable not for comfort, but so its crew could persist in any environment, no matter how hostile. Its crew were enhanced, not for leisure, but to push beyond the limits of biological tolerance. This was not a warship designed for a glorious victory. This was a warship designed for a long, unforgiving struggle. It was a ship built by a species that expected to suffer, to be pushed to the brink, and to still keep fighting. "High strategos!" Cale exclaimed, his voice cracking with a rising note of panic. "The sensor arrays are detecting what appear to be hundreds of dormant, independent drone bays, not conventional attack drones. They are multi-purpose, modular, each capable of deploying a dizzying array of tools, repair systems, defensive countermeasures, even miniature, highly destructive excavation charges. They are not merely weapons, they are adaptive problem solvers. And their internal power cores are charged not for sustained flight, but for rapid, high-yield bursts." Veskrin's multifaceted eyes were wide with a comprehension that bordered on dread. They weren't just looking at a ship, they were looking at a philosophy. A stark, brutal, and utterly uncompromising philosophy of survival. The humans had not designed a vessel to achieve victory in battle. They had designed a vessel to ensure they could not be defeated. This was not a display of power. It was a declaration of defiance against the very concept of surrender. "Terminate the scan!" Veskrin roared, his voice echoing through the silent bridge. "Terminate it now!" Tactician Cale immediately complied, the data streams vanishing from his console, leaving only the stoic, unremarkable image of the Ironclad on the main viewer. Yet the image now seemed different to Veskrin. It no longer looked crude or unsophisticated. It looked predatory. A silent, unblinking entity awaiting its moment. The Terrans hadn't designed a ship to defeat an enemy. They had designed a ship to outlast one. And the implications of that realization were far more terrifying than any weapon Valerian technology had ever encountered. The arrogance that had once defined Veskrin's gaze had been replaced by a chilling apprehension. He had underestimated them, severely. The convocation had just begun, but the true nature of humanity had already been unveiled, not through a declaration of war, but through a silent, terrifying scan. Thank you for watching Part 1 of Aliens Scanned a Human Warship. What they saw left them terrified. If you enjoyed this glimpse into humanity's unyielding nature, please smash that like button and consider subscribing for more HFY stories. What do you think High Strategos Veskrin will do next? And where are you tuning in from? Let us know in the comments below. High Strategos Veskrin stood transfixed, the lingering ghost of Cale's scan data still searing his multifaceted vision. The Ironclad pulsed on the main viewer, no longer a crude block of metal, but a silent, defiant challenge to every principle the Valerian hegemony held sacred. His carefully constructed worldview, built on efficiency, elegance, and measured power, had just been utterly dismantled by a single, terrifying truth. The humans were designed for something else. Not for victory, but for unending endurance. Not for conquest, but for survival against all odds. The Convocation of Worlds, meant to be a grand display of Valerian influence and diplomatic prowess, now felt like a fragile shell. The whispers of disquiet, the subtle shifts in species alliances, had been drowned out by the sudden, terrifying realization that there was a power in the galaxy utterly unlike their own. And Veskrin, in his arrogance, had invited it to their very heart. Just as the silence on the Goliath Ascendant's bridge became unbearable, a ripple, subtle at first, pulsed through the star-dusted diplomatic bay. It was not a conventional energy signature, nor a warp displacement. It was a distortion, a shimmer in the fabric of space itself, growing with alarming speed at the furthest reaches of the system. "High strategos," Tactician Kale's voice, usually a calm chime, was now laced with raw terror. "Unidentified phenomenon, massive energy signature, chaotic and unstable, it's dissolving inbound light waves." On the main view screen, the shimmer expanded, resolving into a churning, iridescent void. Not a tear in space, but a presence. Amorphous, vast, and utterly devoid of recognizable form, it radiated an oppressive emptiness that seemed to drain the very light from the stars around it. "What is it?" Veskrin demanded, his voice thin, his feathery crest flattened in alarm. "Unknown, high strategos. Our long-range probes went silent the instant it appeared." It's expanding," Kale struggled, his digits dancing across the console, trying to make sense of the impossible readings. "Gravimetric readings are spiking erratically, energy absorption on a monumental scale. It's consuming everything." Panic began to spread through the Convocation fleet. The elegant, efficient vessels of the Concord of Worlds, designed for swift, decisive strikes or graceful diplomatic missions, were now exposed as fragile constructs against a force that defied all known physics. Their power conduits, optimized for clean energy flow, suddenly overloaded or simply winked out as the anomaly's influence stretched across the system, siphoning energy directly from their shields and propulsion systems. "Shields to full," Veskrin roared, but the command was almost immediately rendered moot. The Goliath Ascendant's formidable energy barriers flickered, then dimmed, straining against an unseen drain. Alarms blared across the bridge. "Weapons, fire at will, target the anomaly, do something." A volley of crimson plasma bolts, blue energy lances, and focused gravitic pulses streaked across the void, impacting the shimmering void entity. They vanished without a trace, absorbed, or perhaps simply ceased to exist within its chaotic field. The anomaly didn't recoil. It didn't even acknowledge the attack. It simply continued to expand, its terrifying, silent presence creeping closer. On the Ironclad's bridge, Captain Thorne watched the unfolding horror with grim composure. Zara Vey pointed to the tactical display. "Valerian shields failing across the board, Captain. Their power systems are critical. Other species are faring worse. The Xyler cruisers just imploded. Energy resonance cascade. Looks like the entity feeds on high-yield output." "Precisely," Thorne murmured, a flicker of something almost like grim satisfaction in his eyes. "That's why our power systems are inefficient by Valerian standards. Distributed redundancy, not optimized for a single critical path. And our low signature makes us less of a primary target for now." He leaned forward. "Status on the Convocation vessels?" "Chaos, Captain. Mass panic. Multiple calls for emergency FTL jumps, but the anomaly's field is interfering with warp drives. They're trapped." Thorne nodded. "As expected. Get us a full bioscan of the entity, Zara. I want every frequency, every particulate, every gravimetric fluctuation. Start feeding the data into the adaptive problem-solver matrices. Understood, Captain. Running predictive models now. Zara's fingers flew across her console, her movements precise, unhurried. The Ironclad remained a silent, unmoving block, its exterior still appearing inert, its shields a passive, barely their hum. This was the strength Veskrin had scoffed at, not offensive power, but sheer, unyielding resistance. The shimmering entity, now recognized by Kale as a Void Weaver, an ancient, theoretical cosmic predator from forgotten xenological archives, surged forward. It lashed out with tendrils of pure chaotic energy, not solid, but an absence of reality itself. A Valerian diplomatic cruiser, caught in its path, began to visibly dissolve, its metal hull bubbling, its crew screaming over open comms as their very atoms seemed to unravel. Within moments, the cruiser was gone, leaving only a lingering distortion in space, as if it had never been. "It's consuming them," Kale shrieked on the Goliath Ascendant. "High strategos, we must retreat, abandon the convocation." Veskrin, for the first time in his life, felt true, paralyzing fear. His empire, his people, his very existence felt utterly insignificant before this monstrous, unknowable force. The Goliath Ascendant was a monument to Valerian power, yet it was being slowly, inexorably drained. Its elegant curves, its polished surfaces, seemed to invite destruction from this formless terror. Then, from the corner of his multifaceted eye, Veskrin saw it. The Ironclad, still there, still stoic, still unmoving. "The Terran vessel," Veskrin rasped, a sliver of desperate hope piercing his despair. "Why is it not affected? Why is its energy signature holding?" "Its power systems are adapting, high strategos," Kale stammered, his eyes wide as he accessed the old scan data. "Shunting energy, rerouting, isolating. It's bleeding off excess power, converting it to inert heat. And its hull, the layered alloys, are somehow resisting the molecular decay. It's like the ship is actively rejecting the Void Weaver's influence." Indeed, where other ships were dissolving or collapsing, the Ironclad simply seemed to absorb the ambient chaos, its dense, crudely armored shell humming with a low, resonant frequency. It was not deflecting the attack, but enduring it. On the Ironclad, Zara Vey spoke. "Captain, predictive models suggest a resonant frequency, a counter-oscillation that might disrupt the Void Weaver's energy absorption. It's a highly unstable frequency, could cause systemic failure in conventional systems. And it requires a massive, instantaneous energy burst." Thorne's eyes glittered. "Unstable is what we do, Commander. That's what Project Sentinel was designed for. And the energy burst. What about the gravimetric destabilizers in our ammunition stores? Can we adapt them for a wider field pulse?" Zara's smile returned, wider now. "That's what the modular weapon mounts are for, Captain. We can reconfigure one of the main mass drivers into a wide-area pulse emitter. It won't be precise, but it might create a localized disruption field." "Do it," Thorne commanded. "Prepare for rapid deployment of adaptive problem-solver drones. Prioritize counter-frequency emitters and localized energy disruption charges." The Ironclad, for the first time, stirred. Its outer plating, previously seamless, began to shift. Thousands of tiny, barely visible vents opened, releasing plumes of inert gases, bleeding off the heat generated by its shunting power cores. The ship seemed to take a deep, slow breath, then its forward section began to morph. One of the massive kinetic weapon emplacements retracted, its housing opening to reveal a complex array of shimmering, crystalline conduits that began to glow with a faint, contained energy. "They're doing something," Veskrin exclaimed, watching in bewildered awe from the Goliath Ascendant. "They're reconfiguring their weapon systems, but what could possibly work against that?" The Void Weaver, sensing the shift, focused its malevolent attention on the Ironclad. Tendrils of absence lashed out, striking the human vessel. The Ironclad shuddered but did not break. Its internal structural integrity fields, woven throughout its architecture, flared, absorbing the impact, redistributing the stress. Alarms blared on its bridge, but Captain Thorne remained unmoving, his crew a picture of focused, grim determination. The Valerian scan had noted their suppressed fear responses, replaced by aggressive determination. Now, Veskrin saw it in action. They were not panicking. They were preparing to fight. "The crew," Cale cried, his voice laced with renewed horror. "Biosignatures are spiking. They're not just enduring the impacts, high strategos, they are adapting. Their cellular structures are reinforcing, their neurological processing is accelerating, they're thriving in this chaos." Indeed, within the Ironclad, the physiological modifications Veskrin had found so unsettling were proving invaluable. Exposed to the fringe effects of the Voidweaver's energy drain, the human crew experienced intense disorientation, nausea, and searing pain. But their enhanced bodies were fighting back. Rapid healing factors accelerated cellular repair, increased bone density resisted the internal concussive forces, and enhanced neurological processing allowed them to filter the chaotic data, to make sense of the impossible. They bled from eyes and nose, but their hands remained steady on their consoles. "Gravimetric pulse emitter online, Captain," Zara announced, her voice strained but clear. "Energy surge inbound, reconfiguring shields for maximum internal dampening." "All drones deployed," Thorne commanded. From hundreds of previously unnoticed bays, thousands of small, angular drones erupted. Not sleek, weaponized fighters, but multi-jointed, almost insectoid constructs, each bristling with an astonishing array of tools. They swarmed the Ironclad's hull, then plunged directly into the shimmering, corrosive field of the Voidweaver. The Valerian bridge crew gasped. It was suicide. No conventional drone could survive even a moment within that destructive field. Yet, the human drones, with their rapid, high-yield bursts of internal power, were not conventional. They were adaptive problem solvers. They swarmed the Voidweaver, not firing weapons, but activating their various tools. Some released concentrated bursts of light, others tiny gravimetric distortions. Still others deployed miniature excavation charges, not for destruction, but for localized, high-energy explosions that briefly pushed back the Weaver's amorphous form. They were like gnats, but gnats that could disrupt a storm. Then the Ironclad fired. From its reconfigured main mass driver, a wave of pure, unstable energy pulsed outward. It was not a beam, nor a projectile, but a dissonant frequency, a wave of raw, untamed chaos. The wave struck the Voidweaver, and for the first time the cosmic entity reacted. The shimmering, amorphous form rippled violently. Tendrils recoiled, dissolving into nothingness. The oppressive emptiness that had radiated from it momentarily lessened. A guttural, formless shriek, felt directly in the minds of every conscious being in the system, ripped through the void. It was a scream of pain. The Voidweaver, previously impervious, previously unconcerned, writhed. The human drones, acting in concert with the pulse, detonated their charges simultaneously, creating thousands of micro-distortions within the Weaver's form. The entity, vast and unknowable, flinched. It drew back, its form shrinking, its consuming aura momentarily receding. It was not defeated, not destroyed, but it was wounded. For the first time in its terrifying advance, it had encountered something it could not consume, could not assimilate, could not simply ignore. It had encountered a species that fought back with the very chaos it wielded. It's retreating," Cale whispered, awe replacing terror in his voice. The Valerian sensors, now able to function without immediate siphoning, showed the Voidweaver pulling away, its shimmering form less distinct, less menacing. It was still there, but it was hesitating. Captain Thorne, his face streaked with blood from burst capillaries, watched the retreating entity. His voice was a raw rasp, but utterly firm. It's not retreating, Commander. It's learning, and it's angry. It just learned that if it wants to consume us, it's going to have to fight for it. The Convocation fleet, now battered and reeling, stared at the Ironclad. The crude, unyielding block of metal, the vessel they had dismissed, had just saved them. It hadn't won a glorious victory, but it had survived. It had endured. And it had revealed a terrifying capability. The galaxy had never known the ability to weaponize chaos, to fight an impossible foe on its own terms, not with elegance, but with raw, unyielding will. The Valerian Goliath Ascendant, crippled and adrift, suddenly felt like a relic. High Strategos Veskrin looked at the Ironclad, at the grim, resolute humans, and a new, chilling realization settled upon him. The problem was not that the humans were crude. The problem was that they were terrifyingly effective. They had faced the impossible and, through sheer, bloody-minded refusal to yield, had forced the impossible to recoil. But the Void Weaver was still out there. It had tasted something new, something that defied its nature. And Veskrin knew, with a certainty that froze his very core, that it would return. And next time it would come for the Ironclad, it would come for the humans. And the rest of the galaxy would be caught in the crossfire. The Valerian fleet was in disarray, its ships bleeding energy and crew alike. High Strategos Veskrin, his multifaceted eyes fixed on the retreating shimmer of the Void Weaver, felt a primal dread. The creature was not gone, merely regrouping, undoubtedly analyzing the surprising resistance it had met. And all of that resistance had come from the humans. On the Ironclad's bridge, Captain Thorn was barking orders, his voice rough but clear. Damage report, prioritize internal structural integrity, seal all breaches, divert power to life support and regeneration chambers, get our injured into immediate care. His crew, though visibly exhausted and battered, moved with a practiced efficiency that spoke of countless battles endured. They didn't panic, they simply acted. Zara Vey, wiping blood from her temple, reported, "Hull integrity at 60%, Captain." Internal systems compromised in multiple sections, but redundancy protocols are shunting power. We're holding. Casualties are high but recoverable. Recoverable, Thorn repeated, a grim satisfaction in the word. Another species would have been routed, their vessel irrevocably damaged, but the Ironclad was designed to persist. Its internal trauma bays, full-spectrum regenerative chambers as noted in the Valerian scan, were already filled with injured crew, their enhanced physiology speeding their recovery even as the ship stitched itself back together. Veskrin, regaining some of his composure, ordered his comms officer. Hailing frequency to the Ironclad, "Captain Thorn, this is High Strategos Veskrin. I require a full debriefing on your vessel's capabilities and on the nature of this Void Weaver." Thorn's tired face appeared on the Goliath Ascendant's main view screen. "High Strategos, our capabilities were on display. As for the Void Weaver, it's an apex predator. It feeds on energy, on matter, on order itself. It seeks to consume and reduce everything to its base components. Our guess is it was drawn to the Convocation's massive combined energy signature." "But how did you resist it?" Veskrin pressed, his feathery crest still flared with a mix of fear and utter bewilderment. "Your ship, your crew, they defied its very nature." Thorn gave a short, humorless laugh. "We're harsh-worlders, high strategos. We come from a world that tried to eliminate us for millennia. Every system, every piece of technology, every physiological modification we develop, it's all for one purpose: to survive something that should destroy us. We build to endure chaos, not just to avoid it. We train to operate when every instinct screams to shut down. We adapted to a galaxy that cares nothing for our existence. And the Void Weaver, it's just a bigger, more complex version of the chaos we already know." Veskrin stared at the human, a stark, terrifying understanding dawning in him. These beings didn't just adapt to extreme environments, they embraced them. They didn't merely survive, they learned to thrive in the face of oblivion. Their entire existence was a defiance of natural limits. "It will return," Veskrin stated, the words heavy with dread. "And it will be stronger. It will have adapted to your counter-oscillation." "What then, Captain?" Thorn's gaze hardened. "Then we adapt harder, we fight smarter, and we show it why trying to consume humanity is the last mistake it will ever make." His voice dropped, resonating with an unyielding conviction that sent a chill down Veskrin's spine. It thought it was hunting. It just became the hunted. The Convocation fleet, battered and terrified, now looked at the Ironclad with a new, fearful respect. The humans, the crude, illogical harshwelders, had just revealed a depth of resilience and ferocity that dwarfed any conventional threat. But the battle was far from over. The Void Weaver was merely regrouping, perhaps even evolving. And Veskrin, for the first time in his life, felt that the very survival of the Valerian hegemony, indeed, the entire galaxy, rested on the terrifying, unyielding shoulders of humanity. The shimmer of the Void Weaver, though distant, seemed to pulse with renewed intensity. Its retreat had been a feint, a temporary reprieve. It had learned the humans were a unique challenge, and it was preparing to return with a vengeance. The universe held its breath. If you thought the Void Weaver was terrifying, wait until you see what it brings back. And how will humanity, the ultimate underdogs, continue to defy the impossible? Don't miss the next part of this epic saga. Smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single moment of humanity's struggle against the cosmic unknown. What do you think the Void Weaver's next move will be? Let us know in the comments below. The universe held its breath. On the bridge of the Goliath Ascendant, High Strategos Veskrin felt his very essence tremble. The retreating anomaly, a shimmering, malevolent wound in space, was a phantom of utter dread. Yet it was not the Void Weaver that now held his gaze, but the Ironclad. The human vessel, battered but unbowed, pulsed with a raw, defiant energy. It was a testament to a philosophy of survival Veskrin had scorned and now desperately needed to understand. "Captain Thorn," Veskrin transmitted, his voice stripped of its usual regal cadence, tinged with a humility alien to his species. "High Strategos Veskrin, my fleet is compromised. Our power conduits are destabilized, our auxiliary systems near collapse. We require assistance." "Immediate assistance?" Thorn's tired face appeared on the view screen, a grim determination etched into every line. "Understood, Strategos. Send us your diagnostic data. Our adaptive problem-solver matrices can analyze your systems, identify stable power shunts. We'll send our repair drones, but conventional Valerian systems are highly susceptible to the Void Weaver's residual energy bleed. They will need extensive dampening." Veskrin nodded, a strange mix of relief and profound shame washing over him. The powerful Valerian hegemony, reduced to begging for aid from a probationary species whose technology they had so arrogantly dismissed. But survival superseded pride. "Data streams incoming." "We are at your mercy, Captain." Indeed, the human drones, those adaptive problem-solvers, were already at work. Hundreds of the multi-jointed constructs, their forms shimmering with a faint energy-dampening field, flew from the Ironclad. They swarmed the Goliath Ascendant and other critical Valerian vessels, their tiny manipulator arms deploying specialized null generators, isolating unstable energy nodes, and initiating emergency shunts. It was slow, painstaking work, for the Valerian ships were elegant and complex, designed for efficiency, not resilience to cosmic predators that fed on pure energy. Commander Zara Vey, her face still smudged with a streak of dried blood, reported to Thorn. "Valerian fleet stabilization underway, Captain. Their energy output remains critically low, but we're preventing full systemic collapse. Estimated full recovery indeterminate. These Void Weaver resonance echoes are persistent." "Understood," Thorn acknowledged. He turned to the main view screen where the shimmering distortion of the Void Weaver still hovered at the edge of the system. It's not just retreating, it's analyzing, adapting. It now knows our counter-frequency. It will return stronger, and with a new method of attack. A deep tremor ran through the Ironclad. Not physical damage, but something else. A subtle, insidious invasion of its internal networks. Alarms, previously manageable, began to strobe erratically across the bridge consoles. "Captain," a junior tactical officer cried, his voice laced with alarm. "Internal network breach. It's inside our firewalls. Not a data packet, but a thought. It's attempting to integrate with our tactical AI." Thorne's eyes narrowed. The Void Weaver. It learned. It's not just consuming energy, it's consuming information. It's trying to infiltrate our command systems, learn our capabilities from the inside out. On the Goliath Ascendant, Veskrin watched in horror as the Ironclad began to convulse with internal energy surges, its exterior lights flickering wildly. What is happening to them? Are they under attack again? Kale, his face pale, monitored the human vessel. "High strategos, the Void Weaver, it's projecting. A wave of pure, concentrated informational chaos. It's not physical, it's psychic. A mental assault designed to corrupt and unravel thought itself. It's trying to seize control of the Ironclad's neural networks." Within the Ironclad, the bridge was a maelstrom of unseen torment. Crew members clutched their heads, their faces contorted in agony as alien concepts, fragmented memories of unimaginable scale, and the echoing screams of assimilated species flooded their minds. The ship's internal temperature regulation systems, designed to handle extreme shifts, began to cycle wildly, from Arctic cold to scorching heat, mirroring the chaotic internal struggle. "Neural dampeners to max," Thorne bellowed, his own body shaking violently, a thin trickle of blood running from his nose. His enhanced neurological processing, while allowing him to filter vast amounts of data, also made him more susceptible to this direct mental assault. "Zara, get a lock on the source of the informational wave. We need to disrupt its broadcast." Zara Vey, slumped against her console, fought against the mental onslaught. Her eyes, normally so sharp, were unfocused, struggling against the foreign invasion. Her hands twitched, trying to input commands as alien whispers filled her mind, urging her to open critical systems, to betray her ship, her species. It's amorphous, Captain. No single point of origin. It's radiating from the main Void Weaver form like a distributed network of pure thought." The Ironclad groaned, its internal systems struggling against the invasive influence. The very fabric of its advanced AIs began to flicker, their logical processes unraveling under the strain of alien consciousness. Warnings of self-corruption blared across the bridge. The ship, which had been built to endure physical chaos, was now facing a threat that struck at the core of its intelligence. Veskrin watched, horrified. He understood. This was the true terror of the Void Weaver. It didn't just consume, it corrupted. And if it could seize control of the Ironclad, humanity's greatest strength would become its greatest weakness. "Captain Thorne," Veskrin transmitted, his voice urgent. "Your AI systems, they are being compromised. You must disconnect, purge your networks." Thorne, his eyes burning with a desperate fire, ignored the warning. Disconnecting their core AI would cripple the Ironclad, leaving them blind and inert. They would not surrender their minds. "Zara," Thorne gasped, pushing through the pain. "Our physiological modifications, the neural enhancements, are they giving the Void Weaver a direct conduit? Is it using our own enhanced brains against us?" Zara, her breath coming in ragged gasps, managed to articulate a single word. "Yes." A chilling realization struck Thorne. Their greatest strength, their enhanced intellect, their direct neural interfaces with the ship systems, was now a gateway for the Void Weaver's parasitic intelligence. The situation seemed truly impossible. They couldn't fight a foe that was literally within their minds. using their own processing power against them. Then a flicker of something new crossed Thorn's face. Not defeat, but an idea. A terrible, reckless, utterly human idea. "Commander Vey," Thorn rasped, a new resolve hardening his voice. "Initiate Project Chimera. Full activation. Route all internal network traffic through the crew's neural interfaces. Every single crew member on this ship. And then, open a direct, unfiltered conduit to the Voidweaver's informational broadcast." Zara's eyes, despite the pain, snapped open in shock. "Captain, that's pure suicide. It will utterly shatter our minds. No human brain can withstand direct, unfiltered exposure to that level of alien consciousness. It will consume us all." "It's already trying, Commander," Thorn stated, his voice now calm, utterly devoid of fear despite the torment written on his face. "But it doesn't understand us. It understands consumption. It understands chaos. But it doesn't understand will or defiance. Or the sheer, bloody-minded refusal to yield that defines humanity." Project Chimera was a contingency born of desperation, a terrifying gamble. In theory, it allowed the entire crew to act as a distributed, collective neural network, bypassing and reinforcing the ship's primary AI if it was compromised. But to open a direct, unfiltered conduit to an entity that fed on pure thought, it was madness. It was not just a mind-to-mind link. It was an invitation to a cosmic predator to gorge itself on hundreds of human minds simultaneously. Veskrin, listening to the unfolding horror, felt a fresh wave of despair. They are going to sacrifice themselves. They are going to allow their minds to be devoured. He couldn't comprehend such self-destructive bravery. The Valerian way was elegant retreat, calculated survival. This was an unbridled, visceral charge into the heart of oblivion. On the Ironclad, every human crew member, battered and reeling from the mental assault, braced themselves. They knew the risk. They had been born of harsh worlds, shaped by relentless adversity, and they had faced their own inner demons countless times. This was just a bigger, more alien demon. "Project Chimera initiated, Captain!" Zara cried, her voice strained, a fresh surge of blood now running from her ears. The bridge lights intensified, then dimmed, then pulsed in a chaotic rhythm, mirroring the storm raging within the collective human consciousness. The Ironclad shuddered violently as a raw, unfiltered torrent of alien consciousness flooded its internal networks, pouring directly into the minds of its crew. For a moment, it seemed Zara's terrible prediction would come true. Screams, silent yet deafening, echoed through the ship. Human minds, assaulted by millennia of alien data, collapsed memories, and the primal hunger of the Voidweaver buckled under the strain. Bodies convulsed, eyes rolled back, and the very air in the ship seemed to vibrate with unbearable psychic pressure. But then, something impossible happened. The Voidweaver, which had expected to find soft, pliable minds to consume, found something utterly different. It found resistance. Not just resistance, but a defiant, unyielding will. The human minds, individual yet collectively linked, did not break. They fought back. The mental onslaught continued, but now the screams of the humans were mingled with something else. A roar. A roar of defiance, of raw, animalistic territoriality. The human minds, honed by generations of adapting to overwhelming threats, began to process the incoming chaos. They didn't just receive the data, they wrestled with it. They began to unravel the Voidweaver's thoughts, to identify its weaknesses, to understand its alien logic through sheer, bloody-minded intellectual force. Veskrin watched, transfixed, as the Ironclad, previously convulsing, now seemed to pulse with a dark, furious energy. The Voidweaver, still radiating its informational chaos, now seemed surprised, hesitant. The raw, hungry power of its psychic assault was being met not with collapse, but with a terrifying, unyielding counterpressure. It's trying to pull back its influence," Kale stammered, his multifaceted eyes wide with disbelief. The humans, they're not just resisting the mental invasion, high strategos, they're expelling it. They're broadcasting something back, something chaotic but coherent, like a concentrated blast of pure, unyielding defiance. Indeed, from the Ironclad, a new kind of resonance pulsed outward. It wasn't an energy wave or a gravitic pulse. It was a mental wave, a concentrated burst of unbridled, aggressive human will. It was the collective mental scream of hundreds of harsh worlders, each one refusing to yield, refusing to break, forcing their unyielding determination directly into the Void Weaver's amorphous consciousness. The Void Weaver recoiled. Its shimmering form pulsed erratically, its tentacles of absence thrashing wildly. The creature, which had devoured minds and civilizations for untold ages, had just tried to consume humanity and had found itself choking on an indigestible, defiant fury. The mental assault on the Ironclad lessened, then ceased entirely. Captain Thorne slumped, gasping for breath, but a look of grim triumph shone in his eyes. Around him, his crew were similarly battered but alive. They had faced a cosmic predator of pure thought, and they had won. Not by elegance, not by overwhelming power, but by sheer, unadulterated, unyielding will. The Void Weaver, its form flickering with confusion and what could only be described as cosmic rage, dissolved back into the void, retreating faster and more completely than before. It had been driven back by a species it could not comprehend, a species whose minds were as unyielding as their ships. The system was silent once more, save for the hum of battered engines and the distant, pained cries of recovering Valerian crew. The Ironclad hung in space, its lights still flickering, its hull still scarred but utterly defiant. Veskrin stared at the human vessel, his multifaceted eyes reflecting a dawning terror and an impossible respect. They hadn't just survived. They had broken a cosmic entity that fed on thought. They had turned its own weapon against it. But the price, the cost of such a victory, the signs of internal struggle, the subtle tremors, the flickering lights, they had pushed themselves to the absolute brink, perhaps beyond. They had shown the Void Weaver that humanity would not fall easily. They had shown it that consuming them would be a painful, agonizing process. And the Void Weaver would return. It had tasted something new, something that defied its very nature. It would be back, and it would be furious. And the humans, having used their most extreme, most terrifying defense, would be vulnerable. What could they possibly do next? Did humanity just outwill a cosmic entity? And at what cost? The Void Weaver may have retreated, but it's undoubtedly planning its next, even more terrifying move. Don't miss the thrilling conclusion to this saga. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss the final part of Aliens Scanned, a human warship. What they saw left them terrified. What shocking new ability do you think humanity will unveil next? Let us know your theories in the comments below. The Valerian fleet was in shambles, patched and limping thanks to the relentless efforts of the Ironclad's adaptive problem-solver drones. High Strategos Veskrin, observing the repair efforts, felt a profound, unsettling shift in his understanding of the cosmos. The elegance of Valerian design, their precise calculations, had crumbled before the raw, consuming chaos of the Void Weaver. It was the humans, the harsh worlders, with their seemingly illogical redundancies and their unyielding resolve, who had faced the impossible and forced it to recoil. Yet the reprieve was fleeting. The Void Weaver, a shimmering, malevolent wound on the edge of the system, had not been defeated. It had retreated to analyze, to adapt, to prepare. Its informational assaults had failed against the sheer, defiant will of the Ironclad's crew, but Veskrin knew, with a chilling certainty, that it would return with an even more terrifying strategy. The subtle tremors still running through the Ironclad systems, the lingering exhaustion on Captain Thorne's face, spoke of the immense cost of their last victory. "High strategos," Tactician Kale reported, his voice hushed. "Long-range scans indicate the Void Weaver is coalescing. Its energy signature is amplifying exponentially. It's not just returning, it's growing. On the Ironclad's bridge, Captain Thorne watched the same data, his jaw tight. "It learned," he rasped, his voice still hoarse from the last psychic assault. "It knows we're capable of defending against its informational attacks. It knows we can disrupt its energy absorption. So it's coming back with overwhelming force." Commander Zara Vey, her face still pale but resolute, nodded. "Our predictive models indicate a full-spectrum assault, physical consumption, energy drain, and a vastly amplified, multi-layered psychic attack designed to overload even our enhanced neural processing. It will attempt to unravel us from every vector simultaneously." "Can we hold?" Veskrin asked Thorne, his voice devoid of his usual arrogance, replaced by raw desperation. Thorne's eyes, though weary, held an unyielding light. "Not defensively, strategos, not against that. It's consumed worlds, eradicated species. We merely inconvenienced it. It returns for a feast, and we are on the menu." A profound silence fell across the Valerian bridge. The stark truth settled upon them. There was no retreat, no surrender, no negotiating with this entity. It was an existential threat, a force of cosmic entropy that sought to reduce all existence to its base components. Thorne continued, his voice resonating with a grim resolve that pierced through the despair. "But we have one advantage, its nature. It consumes, it adapts, it integrates what it takes. That is its strength, and that can be its weakness." He projected a holographic schematic onto the Ironclad's main view screen. It was a theoretical construct, complex and deeply unsettling. Veskrin recognized elements of it from the forbidden archives of ancient Terran lore Project Excalibur. A weapon so devastating it had been sealed away, designed to unmake existence itself, not just destroy it. "This is our last chance," Thorne explained, his gaze sweeping across his assembled crew and the holographic image of Veskrin. "The Void Weaver absorbed our counter-frequency. It learned from our psychological resistance. It integrated those experiences into its hive mind. It believes it understands us, but it doesn't understand the depth of our refusal to yield. Not truly." Zara Vey stepped forward, her hand resting on a console that glowed with complex schematics. "The Void Weaver is a colossal, self-sustaining network of entangled consciousness. It has no single core in the traditional sense. It's a distributed intelligence, an ever-growing anomaly that processes and integrates everything it consumes. To defeat it, we can't just attack a single point. We have to unravel its entire being." The original Project Excalibur was designed to unravel molecular cohesion, to destabilize matter itself, Thorne clarified. "But this final version, is different. It's designed to unravel information, to inject a pure, unyielding, chaotic, self-replicating paradox directly into a distributed intelligence. If we can get it into the heart of the Void Weaver's processing, it won't destroy it. It will force the Weaver to consume something utterly indigestible, something that will cause its own internal logic to collapse." Veskrin stared at the glowing schematic, a mix of horror and dawning awe battling within him. "You intend to force it to self-destruct by feeding it a paradox of your own creation." "Precisely," Thorne confirmed, a hint of grim satisfaction in his eyes. "It consumes and adapts. We will give it something it can't adapt to, a piece of humanity it could never understand that will shatter its very essence." The plan was a suicide mission, a desperate, final charge. The Ironclad, a vessel designed for endurance, would be stripped of all non-essential systems, its remaining energy focused into a single, devastating thrust. It would become a spear, aimed at the heart of the approaching Void Weaver, carrying the paradoxical payload. "The Void Weaver will return with an escort," Thorne continued, his gaze unwavering. "It will have adapted its forms, creating physical barriers that will absorb kinetic and energy weapons. It will also project a massive psychic null field to prevent any further mental counterattacks. Conventional attacks will be useless. Zaravay then addressed the Valerians. Your fleet, battered as it is, will serve as a distraction. A final, desperate stand. Fire everything you have, not to defeat the Weaver, but to draw its attention, to make it believe you are the primary threat. We need it to commit its full attention and its defenses to you. Veskrin's multifaceted eyes widened. They were to be bait, noble certainly, but bait nonetheless. Yet he understood. Against such a foe, honor was a luxury they could not afford. Survival was the only currency. "And what of your ship, Captain?" Veskrin asked, his voice low. "What of your crew?" Thorn met his gaze. "The Ironclad will be the delivery system, and its crew will be the conduit for the paradox. The Excalibur payload can only be activated by a sustained, high-level neural interface. It requires the raw, unyielding will of human minds to channel its logic-corrupting data directly into the Weaver's hive mind. It's a one-way trip, strategos, no return." A collective gasp swept through the Valerian bridge. This was beyond courage, beyond sacrifice. It was an act of deliberate self-annihilation to ensure the survival of others. It was the ultimate defiance of the Void Weavers consuming nature, not to be consumed, but to become the poison that defeated the consumer from within. Veskrin, for the first time, truly understood the terror in the initial scan of the Ironclad. It wasn't just a ship designed to endure. It was a ship designed to fight back even when there was no hope, to turn its very destruction into a weapon. The Void Weaver returned. It manifested not as a distant shimmer, but as a colossal, churning vortex of pure nothingness, flanked by grotesque, assimilated vessels that pulsed with sickly light. They were organic metal constructs, immune to the Valerians' conventional weaponry, their forms shifting to absorb incoming fire even as it launched spiraling beams of antimatter and tendrils of pure chaotic energy. "All ships, focus fire!" Veskrin roared, pushing aside his fear. The Valerian fleet, joined by the few remaining vessels of other species, unleashed a desperate barrage. Plasma lances, kinetic slugs, and antimatter torpedoes screamed through the void, impacting the Void Weaver's constructs with little effect. But it was enough to draw its attention. The cosmic predator focused its consuming gaze on the Valerians, expecting to break them, to devour them piece by piece. Meanwhile, the Ironclad, stripped down to its bare, skeletal frame, surged forward. It was no longer the squat block of metal Veskrin had first scorned. It was a raw, defiant spear, its forward section glowing with an internal, furious energy. It ignored the assimilated constructs, ignored the energy beams, absorbing the impacts, its internal fields flaring and shunting energy with desperate precision. On the Ironclad's bridge, Captain Thorn, Zaravay, and every available crew member connected their neural interfaces directly to the Excalibur payload. It was not a weapon to be fired, but a paradox to be channeled. As the Void Weaver's tendrils of null energy slammed into their ship, the internal systems screamed, the hull groaned, and the raw power of the Excalibur began to course through their very minds. "It's coming for us," a tactical officer cried, his voice strained. "Direct impact with the main Void Weaver form in T-60 seconds. "Maintain the channel," Thorn bellowed, his face contorted with the effort, blood now streaming from his eyes and ears. "Force the paradox, make it consume it." The Void Weaver, sensing the Ironclad's charge, saw it not as a threat, but as an opportunity. A final, defiant morsel to be devoured. It opened its vast, amorphous maw, tendrils of cosmic absence lashing out to envelop the human vessel, eager to absorb its technology, its knowledge, its very essence. The Ironclad slammed into the Void Weaver's churning form. It was not an explosion, but an unholy embrace. The alien entity began to consume the human ship, tearing at its hull, ripping apart its systems, intending to unravel it into nothingness. But as the Void Weaver consumed the Ironclad, it also consumed the paradox. Through the direct neural conduit, through the sheer, unyielding will of Captain Thorne and his crew, the Excalibur payload unleashed its mind-shattering data. It was not energy, not matter, not a physical force. It was pure, distilled contradiction. It was a problem designed by harshworlders who understood that the greatest threat could come from within, from a logical flaw, from a will so unbending it defied reason. The Void Weaver, which had consumed countless civilizations and integrated their knowledge, found itself drowning in a flood of anti-logic. It tried to process the information, to adapt to it, to integrate it, as was its nature. But the paradox was designed to be indigestible, to be self-destructive. It was a will that refused to be consumed, even as it was devoured, infecting the very devourer. A scream, silent yet felt across the entire system, ripped through the fabric of space. It was not a shriek of pain, but of cosmic confusion, of unraveling purpose. The Void Weaver, previously a cohesive, terrifying entity, began to convulse. Its shimmering form pulsed wildly, then started to unravel. It was not breaking apart, it was simply ceasing to be. Its tendrils dissolved, its assimilated vessels shuddered, then vanished. The vast vortex of nothingness began to shrink, to implode on itself. The Void Weaver, the cosmic predator, was consuming itself. On the Goliath ascendant, Veskrin watched, transfixed, as the monstrous entity collapsed inward, its very existence unmade. And at its heart, the last flickering light of the Ironclad winked out of existence. It was gone. Captain Thorne, Zara Vey, and the entire crew of the Ironclad were gone. They had sacrificed themselves, not in a blaze of glory, but in a quiet, terrifying act of defiance that had brought down an impossible foe. The system was silent. The stars shone, clear and bright once more, unobscured by the malevolent presence that had threatened to extinguish all life. The Void Weaver was no more. It had not been destroyed, it had been erased. Veskrin stood on his bridge, his multifaceted eyes fixed on the empty space where the Ironclad had made its final stand. He felt no triumph, only a profound, shuddering awe. Humanity. They had been crude, illogical, terrifying in their resilience. They had been a species built for suffering, for a struggle that never ended. And in the end, it was that very quality that had saved them all. In the aftermath, the Valerian hegemony, along with the remnants of the Concord of Worlds, began to rebuild. But they were changed. The lessons learned from the humans were etched into their very beings. Efficiency was no longer the sole metric. Resilience, adaptability, and the sheer, unyielding will to fight for existence became paramount. Their future designs, their strategic doctrines, would forever bear the imprint of the Ironclad's final, terrifying lesson. Humanity, though without a home, was not forgotten. Their nomadic fleets, the last remnants of their once thriving civilization, spread across the stars, their ships less elegant, more durable, always ready to face the next impossible threat. They were the harsh worlders, the extreme environment adaptives, the species that had looked oblivion in the eye and refused to yield. They had shown the galaxy that true strength was not in power, but in the unyielding will to defy the very concept of defeat. And as the stars continued their silent watch, a new era began. An era shaped by the chilling understanding that the universe was a place of endless, unimaginable threats, but also a place where a species, forged in the crucible of impossible odds, could rise to meet them and redefine what it meant to survive. The terror of the scan had evolved into an enduring, profound respect. The galaxy knew now, when humanity was pushed to the brink, it didn't just fight back, it became the weapon itself. And somewhere in the vast, uncharted reaches of the cosmos, the seeds of a new home, a new future, began to stir, carrying the legacy of the Ironclad and the indomitable spirit of humanity. Heck yeah! thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the heart of the galaxy, where humanity faced the impossible and emerged victorious. If you were captivated by the Ironclad's final stand and the unyielding spirit of Captain Thorne, please smash that like button and subscribe for more epic sci-fi stories that explore the limits of human potential. What was your favorite moment from this entire series? Let us know in the comments below, and tell us which other species you'd like to see humanity interact with next.